we're ready to go. So I selected about 30 teams, and they're going to be switched into tiers here, as you can see on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. The tiers are National Champion, Final Four, Elite Eight, Sweet 16, and eliminated in the first round. So I took the top 25 from the last poll, plus a few other teams that I just kind of randomly selected and threw in there. And I'm going to tell you how far I think these teams will go. And so it will kind of, you know, obviously build on itself. Obviously, if I have them in, if I have 2 teams in National Champion and 2 teams in Final Four, that means those are the 4 teams I think are going to be in the Final Four, essentially. That's kind of how it'll work. So it's going to be kind of a ranking system. I've got, like I said, I've got the top 25 teams. So we've got Gonzaga, Arizona, Baylor, Auburn, Kentucky, Kansas, Duke, Villanova, Tennessee, Purdue, Providence, Wisconsin, UCLA, Texas Tech, Arkansas, Illinois, St. Mary's, Houston, Murray State, Yukon, USC, Texas, Colorado State, Iowa, UNC, Loyola Chicago, Ohio State, Boise State, South Dakota State, LSU. So those are the 30 teams that I selected, and so we are going to, like I said, rank them based on whether or not I think they're the Final Four is the furthest they'll go, whether or not I think they're going to go, all the way to the national, championship, if I think they're going to be eliminated in the first round. So let's go ahead and get going. With number 1 Gonzaga. They're the BPI leader, which means that's the Basketball Power Index. It factors in strength of record, strength of schedule. It factors in a lot of different things there. It basically tells you like which is truly the best team in the country. They're projected as a top overall seed. They're 2-1 versus top 5 teams. Number 5 Texas, number 2 UCLA. And then they also defeated number 25 Texas Tech, but they lost to number 16 Alabama, who is unranked now. The only one of those top 5 teams that they played at the beginning of the year is still in the top 10. That team is Duke, who they lost to. And this is, just kind of one of those things. I know Gonzaga has made the national championship and has, been on the doorstep. They lost last year to Baylor. They lost to North Carolina a few years ago. And you know what? It's just kind of a I'll believe it when I see it type of thing. So I have Gonzaga in the Final Four tier. I'm not ready to, pick them as a national champion. It seems like they've been, incrementally making it so close. I memean, they used to be kind of that Cinderella team in the tournament, where they would get to like the Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight, not much further. And in the recent years, they've been able to make it to the Final Four, make it to the national championship game. But again, it's one of those things where until I see them actually win, I don't know that I'll go all in on them potentially winning. Number 2, Arizona. They're 28-3 on the season. They're number 4 in the BPI. And they have a top 5 strength of record, which means the teams they have played have been really good. They beat number 4 Michigan at the beginning of the year. They beat Illinois. They split versus UCLA. They did lose to number 19 Tennessee by 4, and the only peculiar loss really in their season was to Colorado. They lost by 14 back on February 26th. They're 3rd in points per game, and they've got a plus 18 in point differential. They have been not just winning their games, they've been winning decisively, and for that reason, I got them in the national championship tier. They kind of creeped up as a team, towards that, stretch run of the season, towards February when we were looking at it. We're like, you know what? This team, has actually been doing a lot of great things. And so I really have Arizona as a team I believe could win the national championship, because you could say on one hand, oh, well, they play in the Pac-12. So, I mean, how really tough could their schedule have been? But the thing is, they're beating Pac-12 teams, by 10, by 15, by 20 points. They've played really well against teams like Illinois, UCLA, Tennessee, who I think are really good teams. Michigan, is a tournament team as well. So I believe in them. I think they can really get the job done. As far as number 3 Baylor, they're 26-5. They are the defending champs, and really the only reason I'm not going to put them in the national championship tier is because we haven't had back-to-back champions since 2007. So I'm going to err on the side of parity, especially this year in the NCAA tournament. They are 5th in BPI, 1st in strength of record. They're 5-3 versus ranked opponents. They beat number 5 Kansas, number 21 Texas in the 3rd and 2nd to last games of the season. So they are really, taking it to some of the better teams in the country right now. So I'm going to go with Baylor as a potential Final Four team. We got Auburn next. Number 4, Auburn. They are 27-4. They got into the top 5 in January, and then it was at that point that they beat number 12, Kentucky. That catapulted them at the time to the number 1 team in the country. They entered February as the number 1 team in the country. Earned third, and then that's when they earned 3 of their 4 losses on the season. They haven't been able to string wins together here as of late. They've only been able to win 1 or 2 games at a time before they lose. So I'll wait until the SEC tournament before I pass really any more severe judgment on Auburn. So for Auburn, I know they the last kind of normal tournament we had, they made it to the Elite Eight and towards the Final Four in 2019, but I've got them in the Elite Eight. I want to see a little bit more from them, and you might think, well, wait, they only have 4 losses. What more could you see? I just want to see them be able to string some wins together, get a few more wins against, high caliber teams. Like if they can go out and beat Kentucky, then in the SEC tournament, then I think that I might have a little bit more faith in them. Because remember, that's also part of this exercise as well, is the fact that we don't know really, these thoughts that I'm having on these teams, they could change, once the bracket is released on Sunday. It could be a much different, thing to think about. Going on to number 5, Kentucky. They are 25-6. They're 3rd in BPI, 4th in strength of record. But against that schedule, they've seen losses to Duke, Auburn, Tennessee, and Arkansas. So they've lost, to a lot of the tough teams that they've played. And you'll notice that this is kind of a theme in this tier list, is that, even if you've had a great strength of record, fine. But at the same time, if you've not done enough against that strength of record, if you've lost to those teams, then I don't really give you the benefit of playing those tough teams. I'm still going to go ahead and put them in the Final Four. I think Kentucky can make it all the way there, but I need to see a little bit more of them. But I thought about putting them in the national champion tier, and I think according to the BPI, they're the second. They're the second most likely team to win, but. I just don't have a ton of faith in them at this point. Kansas, number 6 in the country, 25-6. They're top 5 in both strength of record and strength of schedule, but what have they done against that schedule? Go 5-4 versus ranked teams this season. 2 of those 4 losses by double digits, including an 80-62 loss to Kentucky. Kansas has kind of turned into one of those teams where it's like, hey, they've got this illustrious history, but yet they've not been able to, put together. It always seems like they suffer a disappointing loss in the tournament. I mean, they made they've made the Final Four recently and that kind of thing, but I don't have a lot of faith in them either as far as getting super far. So I've got Kansas in the Elite 8 tier as well. Going on to number 7, Duke. They are 26-5. They have wins over Gonzaga and Kentucky. I'm putting them right here. I'm putting them in the national championship tier, and you want to know why? It's because if you want to look at, above all else, all the things that they've got going on for them, all the things that show that they could potentially be a national champion caliber team. It's also Coach K's last season. And I know that they didn't finish Coach K's career at Cameron Indoor the greatest. They lost to North Carolina. But I mean, what greater motivational, what more motivation do you need than to try to send Coach K out as a national champion? So I've got them in the national championship tier. Moving on to number 8, Villanova. They have they're 23-7. They do have an impressive win over number 17 Tennessee early on in the season, but they came up short against UCLA, Purdue, and Baylor. They're projected as a 3 seed, so I think they can make a run. But Villanova always catches me, kind of sleeping, kind of napping a little bit on them. I don't usually. I'm always hesitant to pick them because when you play in a conference like the Big East, which let's face it, I mean, yeah, they've got Providence, they've got. Xavier's usually pretty solid. They've got, I think Yukon's back in the Big East now too. I mean, you've got some strong teams, but I mean, just that conference as a whole is not, super great. And so when you have that when all you've done is beat up on your own conference. It's kind of the thing that I hate about college football, where teams get kind of graded on the fact that, like, oh, you just beat up an easy schedule. But I think, as far as this goes, when I'm trying to pick a champion who's I think is going to break through March Madness, having a schedule against Big East teams and only really having success against Big East teams is where I kind of get a little, hesitant to pick, teams like Villanova. So I'm putting Villanova in the Elite Eight tier. I think they can have a strong run. I'm just not ready to put them in the Final Four, the national championship tier. Moving on to Tennessee. They are the number 9 team in the country. They're 23-7. Since the start of February, they have won 9 of 10. They split their series with Arkansas, so if you want to play that game where you kind of just negated the one loss that you've had down the stretch run, I mean, they've been really good. So basically, they beat everyone they've played since February. They did beat number 3 Auburn and number 4 Kentucky in that span, so I think they're getting hot at the right time. I've got Tennessee in that Final Four category up there. As far as the Sweet 16, we already talked about Purdue. I think Purdue could get to the Sweet 16. It will remain to be seen whether or not they can get past that. The Sweet 16 level is also where I have number 12, Wisconsin. I bragged about Wisconsin in our February, discussion about, like, oh, hey, what teams, can, what can we look forward to here in the month of February? As far as, what teams have been super impressive at that point in the season. And Wisconsin was that team for me because they've been doing well despite really not having any impressive stats. I mean, they're tied for first in the Big Ten, for the Big Ten championship despite being in the lower echelon in a lot of major statistical categories. And the thing that kind of, jumped out to me as I was looking at their record is that, it seems like every big win is negated by a loss. They'll go out and beat Purdue and then lose to, like, Northwestern, so it doesn't bode well for the tournament. So I think Wisconsin can make a good run, but I'm not comfortable putting them beyond Sweet 16 at this point. Providence, looking at them, they're number 11. They're 24-4. Their only impressive non-conference win was against Texas Tech when they were unranked. They haven't been a ranked team outside the Big East, and they were swept by Villanova. On top of that, they haven't made the Sweet 16 since 1997, and I think that streak will continue. Put the Providence Friars. I think they're going to be eliminated in the first weekend. Again, I just don't have a ton of faith, in this team. Like I said, they beat up, a weak Big East. Or a weaker Big East, and they against a team that they would be, you'd want, because I mean, if they had maybe swept Villanova or got one win over Villanova and then maybe beat one more team that was ranked, I might feel more comfortable putting in the Sweet 16. But I just don't think the Friars are gonna do much come tournament time. Number 12, the number 12 team in the country is UCLA. Or wait, no, I don't have the 12th team in the country because I think that's where Wisconsin was 12, I believe. I think I might have gotten that wrong. Let me just kind of, oh wait, I forgot that's my screen there. I gotta keep that up. Okay, looking at ranked teams here. One second. Okay, I didn't skip anybody. Okay, Wisconsin was 12. Providence was 11. Okay, we're in good shape. Don't worry. All right, getting back into the groove here. I just want to make sure because I got confused on the numbers because when I started this tier list research, it was before the last rankings came out. So you have to forgive me there. Number 13, UCLA. They're not in the top 50 when it comes to points per game, field goal percentage, or 3-point percentage. But I'm not giving up on a team that I picked to be in the Final Four at the beginning of the season, so I went ahead and I threw them in the Elite Eight. I don't think they're gonna make the Final Four again this season, but I had a tough time not having them in kind of that middle category. So give me UCLA to at least make the Sweet 16. Number 14, Texas Tech. They are 7-3 against ranked teams this season, including wins over Texas, Kansas, and sweeping the season series against Baylor, who I said, like I said earlier, is a team I would normally have in the national championship discussion if it weren't for the fact that teams don't typically win back-to-back here as of late. So I also have Texas Tech in that Elite 8 category. Number 15, Arkansas. They are 24-7. They started the season 10-5. That was on January 8th when they had that record. And over the last 2 or so months, they are 14-2. They are another SEC team getting hot at the right time. So I'm going to have Arkansas as a potential Elite 8 team. I think they can be really dangerous once the tournament starts. Number 16, Illinois. They are 22-8. They're the 1 seed in the Big Ten tournament. They've got the 11th leading scorer in the country in Kofi Cockburn. He averages 21 points per game. Though they are 3-4 versus ranked opponents, maybe they'll be able to avenge, their last season's, tournament run where they got bounced by Loyola in the round of 32. So I've got Illinois in that Elite 8 tier as well. Looking at St. Mary's, the Gaels, they are 24-6. They split the season series with Gonzaga, and that's really about it for St. Mary's. Again, another team, in the West Coast Conference, nothing super notable about what they've done this season schedule-wise, and so that just doesn't get the juices flowing for me as far as, going into the tournament. I mean, looking at bracketology here, I want to see, they're ranked as a 6th seed, so, if they're in this situation, that they're projected in, right now, ESPN bracketology has them in the Indianapolis bracket in the Midwest as a 6th seed, and the team they would play if they moved on would be Purdue if Purdue beat the 14th seed. So, it just doesn't do it for me. So I also have them getting eliminated in the first round. I just, one of those things where I'll believe it when I see it. Houston, looking at the Houston Cougars, they are 26-5. They're second to Gonzaga in terms of BPI. They're a top 20 strength of record, but if I'm being honest, of this clump of top 19 or so schools, top 20 or so schools, they're the best, and they're the team I have the most faith in. So I will put them in the Sweet 16, but again, schedule's not super impressive. Moving on to Murray State. They are 30-2 on the season, but again, just not impressed by their schedule, the eye test. I mean, look, it's not like I expect these teams to go out and Murray State should go schedule Kentucky, they should go schedule Kansas, they should go schedule... But it's just I don't know, be another mid-major school that go play Gonzaga, go play, trying to think, Loyola. I know Loyola's not the greatest this year either, but go play another, go play Wisconsin, go play another, fringe, team in the Big Ten where I'm okay, I can, go play Ohio State. I might be able to go play Louisville even. I mean, I know Louisville's not that great in the ACC, but that's at least another, power conference school that you could, kind of notch on your belt. Hey, we beat an ACC school. We beat Louisville. I say that because they're in that, Murray State's in that area. So sorry to the Fighting Jordan Sharps. He's a buddy of mine from 1070. I have Murray State in the eliminated in the first round category. Like I said, just not super impressed. Going on to Yukon, number 20 in the country. They're 22-8. Their win over, they did beat Auburn at the beginning of the year, but that is way in the rearview mirror. They are 1-3 versus ranked teams. They did split with Villanova. I will throw them up here in the Sweet 16, but again, not super confident about what they'll be able to do come March. I should have probably spread out the good teams a little bit more, not just gone down 1 through 25 in ranking, because I feel bad because every sentence I feel is ended with I just don't have a lot of faith in them. And that moves us to USC. They're number 21 in the country. They're 25-6. They're 1-3 versus ranked teams this season. They split the series with UCLA, but that gets them, they're third in the Pac-12. That gets them to about a 7 seed in the tournament. So I just, that means that if they win against the 10 seed, they'll be playing a 2 seed. So they'll be playing the likes of Arizona. Well, Arizona will probably be 1 seed, but they'll be playing the likes of Kansas, Villanova, UCLA, Tennessee, whoever. And I just don't like their chances to get past them. So I think they'll be eliminated in the first weekend as well. So I've got USC down there. Number 22, Texas. They are 21-10. They're a top 20 school in terms of BPI, strength of schedule, and strength of record. They've had to play 11 ranked teams this season, including there was a stretch, I think, of 4 or 5 games in a row against ranked teams. And so, yeah, they are 3-8. But, man, talk about having to go through a gauntlet. That is what Texas has had to deal with this season. They are projected out as a 5 seed, so I think they can at least make the Sweet 16. So I have faith in the Longhorns in getting at least into the second weekend. Number 23, Colorado State. Again, copy and paste what I said about Murray State, what I said about Providence, what I said about St. Mary's. Like, fantastic for Colorado State. That was a team when I looked and kind of saw where they were in the Mountain West. I was like, wow, they're doing really well. It's not a team that you see traditionally at the top of the Mountain West, so great season. Maybe, and that means they're probably most likely to make a run since they're a team that you don't typically see there, but I'm going to say they're eliminated in the first weekend. They were 24-4 on the season, though, so that's pretty impressive. Looking at Iowa, the 24th ranked team in the country. Looking at Iowa on the season, they are 22-9. They're the 5th best team in terms of scoring in the country. They are 83. They average 83 points per game. They have Keegan Murray, who's the 4th leading scorer in the country. He averages 23 points per game. So when you have a player like that who's a true difference maker, if he can get going, I think they can do some good things. They are projected as a 6th seed. The road will be relatively tough, but I'm throwing them in the Sweet 16 conversation. I think Iowa can get there. That moves us on to number 25, the last of our ranked teams before we just kind of have a hodgepodge of just kind of random teams. I have, North Carolina. They've won 11 of their last 13 games, highlighted by a win over Duke at Cameron Indoor on the last weekend of the season. So I think that can potentially propel them. We'll see what they do in the ACC tournament, but I think that can potentially propel them to a run. So I've got UNC in the Sweet 16. Looking at Loyola, and you know what? They're the Missouri Valley Conference champions, Loyola Chicago. They're 25-7, and honestly, this is me just hoping that they have that the Ramblers still have some magic in them. So I'm going to throw Loyola up there in the potential Sweet 16 run as well. Looking at Ohio State, one of the other random teams kind of selected here, they are 19-10. They started February at 13-5. They had just gotten within 3 of defeating Purdue, who was 6th at the time, and so things looked relatively good for Ohio State. And I put them on here as like, oh hey, maybe Big Ten team, maybe they can find a way to make a run. They finished the season 6-5 and have lost 3 of their last 4. So they'll play Purdue most likely in the Big Ten tournament. So I don't see them doing much there. So I think Ohio State is going to be out. Eliminated in the first weekend. I had to take a little sip of Gatorade there. The red Gatorade. It's really good. I used to be a grape guy. But I've been drinking a lot of fruit punch lately. 3 teams left to go through on the tier list here. And we look at Boise State. They're 24-7. And again, another schedule that just doesn't pass the eye test, and they're projected as a 7 seed. So kind of like the same thing with USC. Could they win the first game and make it to the round of 32? Sure. I think they could. But as far as, beating a 2 seed, beating the likes of, a Kansas, a Villanova, a Texas Tech, a Tennessee, I just don't see it. So I've got Boise State and that eliminated in the first round. But you know what? You look at this and you say, Craig, you've been really mean. With the exception of, Gonzaga and Villanova and Houston and Yukon and Loyola, you've been relatively mean to the mid-major schools. Why don't you give them some love? Why aren't you, giving them, the love that they're due? You know what? I will. South Dakota State, they're 29-4. They're projected as a 12 seed, so already good in my book. You've got the 12/5 magic. They're the second best scoring team in the country behind Gonzaga. They average 87 points per game, and what's great is they also... they hit 45% of their 3-pointers, which is best in the country. So, if their shooters get hot, this is a dangerous team. And they also lead the country in field goal percentage. So, this is a team that I think could go make a Sweet 16 run. I really like what the South Dakota Jackrabbits are doing. So, I've got them in that Sweet 16 tier. And then finally, I know you see a lot of other teams down here if you're watching on YouTube. That's because I just found a list of all the college basketball teams. Imagine if I just made you guys sit here through every single college basketball team and was like, hey, we're going to go through each of these teams and we're going to tell you whether or not we think they're going to do well in the tournament. Some may not even make the tournament. So, but no. So I was able to move the teams I wanted to the top, and that was really convenient. But finally, we are at LSU. They're 21-10. They were 15-1 in January. So they are 6-9 down the stretch. They're 15th in terms of BPI. They had a top 25 strength of schedule and a top 25 strength of record. But I think if they get into the right bracket, they can make a run. That's kind of why I've got them in the Sweet 16 tier, because, you know, for instance, right now in bracketology on ESPN, they are projected as a 6th seed playing Michigan in the first round. So I think they could beat Michigan. I think they really could. Michigan's not a super hot team either. I think LSU could win that one. And then they would play the winner of Texas Tech and Seattle. And I know I have Texas Tech in that Elite 8 tier. That doesn't mean I don't think they couldn't get upset. So LSU is a team that showed in the beginning of the season they can play at that high caliber level, win 15 of 16 games, go on a run and be really good. Because during that span, they beat, ranked teams as well. It's like they were playing very strongly. But so they're a team I think that could potentially make a run if they're put in kind of the right bracket and right situation. And that's kind of the feeling on all of these teams. I mean, like I said before, I mean, this is a matter of whether or not these teams get in the right bracket. This is how I feel about these teams before we get to that point where they're, placed in a bracket or anything like that. So